the floor is now open for anyone to ask questions, to make points, observations. I would request that you ask your questions if they are directed towards any particular speaker. Please mention that. Otherwise, these, they'll get answered in the course of when the speakers take their turns and they decide to pick the questions that they want to. So yes.
I like to ask the speaker from Pakistan. He discussed the difficulties faced by journalists in his country, and I like to ask him: can he explain the outside elements who are creating this situation? Because I see people blame various situations on journalists, the government in power, and the opposition, but they don't realize there are outside factors, international elements, which are causing these issues. So I like to know who are the international players involved in Pakistan.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any microphone so that everyone can hear her? Or you can come closer to use one of these mics.
Speak loudly a little.
I want to know what role did language play? Was language play in this effort to balance urban rural coverage? And if, today the Netherlands, their reports are happening,
Okay.
So I have two questions.
Yes, go ahead.
My first question is to Mr. Imad. I'm asking, this has been debated and I'm asking you again, do you think there should be a regulation on the uses of social media, keeping in the mind the Middle Eastern scenario, what has been done in Egypt, Tunisia, and also the things that has happened in Myanmar? Okay. My second question is to Mr. Kamal Siddiqui. You talked about when there's a natural disaster that takes place in Pakistan, the religious organizations are the first one to go and report it. And you gave the example of Jamaat-ul-Dawa. So maybe in your country it's a humanitarian aid, or they provide the thing, but in terms of the Western media and the United States have branded it as a terrorist organization. So how do you perceive on those stories that are done by the Jamaat-ul-Dawa, keeping in the mind and the relations with the India and your Western allies? I mean, how do you perceive the stories done by you?
Yes. Anyone? Yeah.
I actually don't have a question as such, but can I just make an observation?
Sure.
You see, this is, since there's been so much of discussion and we've heard Mr. Yusuf Zai and Kamal, the issue of the Taliban also got reported a lot in India. And we found that, people like Muslim Khan, Baitullah Masood, all became, very popular here. And the tragedy is, and this also talks about embedded journalism in India also, that we used the reports which were released by the Taliban to basically talk against Pakistan. So we also gave them a lot of publicity here when we didn't need to give them publicity. Okay. So the issue which is actually, which I want to ask is also that when we talk about responsible journalism and, in a country like India, we did not need to report on the Taliban with such detail and their statements, but we continue to do it because it allowed us to use it for the purposes of asserting our nationalism and also talking about the problems in Pakistan.
Thank you, Zabina. Yes.
Actually, I joined late, so not very particular speaker, but two of the things I would like to ask. Regarding the two journalists who were held recently in Egypt from Al Jazeera for reporting certain events. So how do you see in the context of free media reporting? And the other thing is, if we advocate the free media reporting that it must be free and not influenced from biases, then what was the reason that Al Jazeera was banned in the United States for around till 2007 until there was pressure at international level? So how could we relate this to events?
Okay. Anyone from the students?
Yes.
Yeah, just a second. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question again to Mr. Siddiqui here. You said when deaths are things like the deaths
And you also talked about press notes coming in and the editorial discretion and your dilemma to go about it. How to respond to such things like the bodies that are found in Balochistan and then they move to certain other parts of Pakistan. So you talked a lot about hows. I really want to know the answer to these hows. What is the course of action then that you people follow when there are such events that come up?
Okay, yeah.
Can I request those who are sitting on the table here, please switch off your mobile phones, because the audio is disturbed even if it is on in silent mode.
My question is to the speaker from Nepal. Like climate change, a very burning issue in today's time. Like living as in a very mountainous environment, like Nepal and Bhutan as well. So, like, what are the challenges that you face in in gathering information about the climate change impacts, especially with respect to rural reporting and reaching out to inaccessible and topographically remote region in Nepal? Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I think we should. Yeah, sure.
This question is to Patricia Mukim. You said that journalists are least trained in a number of issues. My experience is different. Journalists in Pakistan are trained so much. There are so many trainings all the time. Sometimes when I am giving training, I ask them, how many trainings have you attended? And I get answers of 20, 30, 40. Maybe the trainings are not proper. Maybe the trainings are not properly formulated. But trainings on security, on professional issues, they are now, everywhere in my country. Secondly, you said that, dramatizing the peace talks. How do you do that? Please explain, because we are going to have peace talks now in Pakistan. we want to know about your experience. The third thing was, Mr. Prakash mentioned these migrant workers, the way they contribute to the economies in countries like Nepal and Bangladesh and Pakistan. I know Indian migrant workers send $71 billion a year. And it's $15 billion in Bangladesh and Pakistan. It's a lot of money, and they are keeping the economy afloat in many countries. But their plight, their sufferings, their families are not actually properly covered. How do we do that? So maybe.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have a question for Mr. Imad. You talked about social media and we talked about the power of social media. So in context of conflict, can you talk a little bit about the clampdown on social media in the conflict areas? For example, we have an example of Kashmir where anytime there's a protest, we have a clampdown on the social media. So if you could shed a light on that aspect a little bit.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. I have one more question.
Yeah.
My first question is to Mr. Hassan. Like, is it that, like, how would you argue that reporters in Maldives do not have resources to report sea accidents, but have sufficient technology to report 2001 tsunami? And the other question is to Mr. Imad. Like, are we stating or overstating the power of social media by saying that it's more powerful than the government? Like, for example, Arab Spring and the media of China are two different things. In the Arab Spring, the government could not hold the social media, but China still controls the media. For example, it's banning Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. So, by looking at these two extremes, what is social media now? Do we see social media as a tool of change or as a tool to assist change? Like you said that reporters do not have sufficient technology at their disposal to report sea accidents. That is very much common in Maldives. But then you said, but then you also said that you had technology to report 2004 tsunami. So what does it mean actually?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'll because most of the questions were directed to speakers. So I'll name the speakers and they can answer the questions. For other speakers, if they have to contribute or they want to say something, they'll come in after that. So let's begin, because the first question was thrown at Kamal. And there were, first the difficulties faced by journalists, and then also the religious groups going first in the times of disasters, and also deaths not getting reported correctly because you don't get the correct figures. Or, and there was one more question to you. So if you would like to take that.
Okay, in terms of your question about outside elements, you see, we report in good faith. But two incidents have somehow, in some ways, shaken that good faith in terms of our reporting as well. In the earthquake that took place in the northern areas of Pakistan, a lot of aid workers came in to help Pakistanis. And we later on, and not through the Pakistani media or the Pakistan government, at an international level, it was acknowledged that a number of those aid workers were actually doing other covert intelligence work as well. So these, you see, it's very easy for us to say that our government is threatening us and our government is not allowing us to report. But as you rightly pointed out, that there are other factors as well. Another factor that I would draw your attention to is the Osama bin Laden case, in which the perception is, and this may be true or not true, that medical tests, they called it polio, but I don't think it was polio, but some sort of tests were conducted by international NGOs in Pakistan to track down that family. Now, we are in Pakistan facing a crisis in terms of polio, but the repercussions or the backlash of that, what's happened in terms of, even if we write stories that polio is a problem, a lot of people see it as an American conspiracy now. So these are, in terms of our reporting, yes, there are other factors that sometimes we don't name, and thank you for saying that it's not just the government or political parties or militants, there are also other factors and other players that come into play. Okay. In terms of your question about the religious organizations, Jamaat al-Dawa was just one example. What I wanted to say, and I'll keep Jamaat al-Dawa aside, and talk about religious organizations in Pakistan that are also known for spreading terror and all sorts of, in terms of, they are banned in Pakistan as well. These organizations are also active. So my point was that we are in a predicament as journalists, that when they are doing such good work, and at the same time we know at the back of our minds, or we know from our experience, that they're not the organizations. So how do we report them? Do we say, yes, brilliant, you're doing great work, and not give the background to the organization? So this is our predicament in terms of reporting. That's what I was saying. Now, your question was about bodies in Balochistan. You see, we can't always assume that it is one side or the other that is killing the people. So our first challenge is that when a body appears somewhere, our first challenge is not to name or not to suspect one side or the other. Our challenge is to report it and then leave things and see how it goes from there. That's the biggest issue. And that's how, when you said that, what is the how? The how is that we don't name who we suspect, because that just makes things worse. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Kamal. How, in reporting rural and urban stories. And the other was about climate change. If you would take that.
Yeah. Is language a barrier to against rural coverage? Yes, to an extent, and largely no. It's a disadvantage to the English readers or English audience, because if something happens out in the districts or in remote areas, then the version that they get to hear from the English press or English news is a very distilled or second version 2 or version 3. What happens is somebody speaks in Nepali and the district correspondent sends it in Nepali, which comes to Kathmandu, which is translated into English and then finally edited. So, what is actually said could be far removed. What's actually reported could be far removed from what has been actually said. And then the next morning
It becomes like Chinese whisper.
so, and then the next day it happens. Well, the court has been tampered with. That's an everyday affair, because the desk editors many times try to make it a better court. Although there is,
You speak in the microphone,
sorry.
Mr. Prakash. Yeah. That will get.
Although we are not supposed to make any changes with what has been said, we have to put the words verbatim. The desk editors use their, do some handiwork and make changes here and there. In Nepali language, yes. The Nepali language space gets to the readers of Nepali language space get to read a little more about the rural coverage, because events happen in the Nepali language, and readers of or the audience of the Nepali language can easily relate with the districts where the news takes place. Unlike in English, which prefers to go for a digital coverage. And to your question on climate change, the reporting or opinion pieces analysis on climate change is slightly difficult. Because Nepal government itself doesn't do a lot of research, and when there is not enough research, you have no access to information. Any research on impacts on climate change is largely diverted down to the media in Kathmandu through either the UN agencies or IUCN. So we don't have first-hand access to knowledge. The second is, then again, the remoteness of where the impacts of climate change is actually felt by the people. Reporters are largely based in the district headquarters, and the events, the impacts are felt by people who live particularly in the high up in the mountains. Many times what has happened is, newspapers and televisions have used, freak, unique events as portrayed them as impact of climate change, which may or may not be the case.
Okay.
So anything out of the usual happens is attributed to be a result of climate change. And then again, the third challenge on reporting on climate change is the level of knowledge, expertise of the reporters, because we get these reports from a very general correspondent who is an expert in sports, business, politics, climate, economy. So he or she is not really competent to understand the issues of climate change. That's a crippling disadvantage. And, to Mr. Yusuf Zai's concern, how do we do report on migrant workers and the impacts, whatever the families of the migrant workers may have been going through? That's quite a challenge. Nepal receives roughly somewhere around $5 billion worth of remittance, which is 500 billion rupees. But then, where is the money going? What are the families doing? That's largely unreported. So much so, we have to rely on, there was a recent coverage by The Guardian about so many thousands of people dying while Qatar is constructing its World Cup venue. And this reporter did a story focused on Nepali migrants who had died. They had the resources and the zeal to follow, track down, go to the villages to track down the families and all that. That liberty, or we don't really have access to resources. We don't have resources within our control, so we cannot really do that much. But then for the moment, we'll have to rely on Guardian or the news or whatever to get to hear the other side of what is happening to the families of the migrant workers.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Prakash. There were more than a couple of questions to Mr. Ahmad on regulation on social media, clamp down on social media, overstating that social media has become more powerful than the governments. And there was one more. So would you answer that and keep your responses brief so that we don't delay everyone?
I'll try my best.
Okay.
First of all, there is a difference between regulation and restriction of something. Okay, something that regulation should be restricting something. I don't accept restrictions. You cannot restrict anything on human beings. The social media is banned in China, it's banned even in Iran, it's banned in many other countries. Russia is going to ban it. But in Iran, though it's banned, most of the Iranians are in the Facebook. Though it is banned, the president is in the Facebook. Though it is banned, the foreign minister is in the Facebook, and their pages are very popular. Yes, though it is banned. You see, you cannot, because you see, when a politician sees that the social media can get him a lot of votes, so he says, why shouldn't I use it? Okay? And though it's banned, they all use it. Okay? So banning anything will not solve any problem. But for sure, there should be some regulations on using I believe that there should be some regulations on using the issues that are distributed in social media. For example, someone would write something on Twitter or distribute a film on YouTube or on Facebook, and it's incorrect, or it will disturb the society. It will end up with killing thousands of people. For example, we have seen a lot of YouTube movies come out from Syria. And then when we checked the movies, these movies were from Iraq, were from other places, and just they distributed it as facts in Syria. Well, as a journalist, I have some obligations. One of them is to check the source of this news, the item that I am getting, and to be sure that when I publish it, the person who put this on the net, did he or she has intentions to disturb others or not? If there is no regulation, it will end up with what you can see in Kashmir, in Syria, in other countries. Okay? When I say it's getting you see, governments don't like transparency. No government in the world likes transparency, especially when a network takes a side. The neutrality for a network is very important, but when a network or a news agency or a newspaper takes sides, okay, it should expect to be faced with authorities facing it, with authorities taking the reporters to jail, to prison, to other things. And especially in Egypt, I can tell you that no reporter or journalist has the right to report. The Egyptian government didn't license any journalist to work inside Egypt. So it has the right to take every journalist there to prison. This was an issue that happened for us because Press TV and Al Alam, they had journalists also in Egypt and taken to prison. And they called me because I had good relations with the Egyptian ambassador to try to release them. and he said nobody has license, no journalist has license to work in Egypt. So we can take anyone to prison. They are not allowed to report.
Okay, thank you. And there was this question from Rahimullah Yusufzai about, directed at Patricia, about in Pakistan journalists being overtrained and not trained. Yes.
I'll answer your second question first, which was about peace processes, how to report and how to do it. I think we in the media, we have certain conditioned responses. We privilege some news over others, and conflict reporting is very newsy, it's very action oriented, a lot of adrenaline is pumped into the stories. But peace reporting is more about semantics, and they are long drawn processes. Now, the fear in this is that media, without giving enough time for these processes, might just delegitimize the actors in the peace processes and therefore become spoilers to the peace processes. So, in fact, we do not have enough training on peace journalism. And if we have war correspondence, I don't see why we cannot have peace correspondence as well. So that's my answer to your second question. The first question is, you're very fortunate to have well-trained journalists. In India, the further away you go from Delhi, the worse it gets. You know, you don't need qualifications. If you're able to write a few things, if you're a good observer of things, you get taken by newspaper houses, because also journalists are the worst paid people in this country. So, in such a situation where young journalists particularly are so impressionable and ready to sell their souls, how do we get the story out totally unbiased, unprejudiced, and expect them, to sort of understand the nuances of what is happening around them? So we do get some training on general reportage, but certainly very, very little or nothing on conflict reporting.
Thank you. Thank you all. With this, we come to this end of this session, and also the end of the conference, because it was a 2-day conference scheduled to end after this session. The discussions we had in this session were both thought-provoking and insightful. To draw any conclusions or to say that this was said and this was missed would not be fair on me to do that, because everyone made a valid point, and everyone did it with his or her interpretation of seeing things from where he or she stands. So I come back to my original point that you see, depends what you see, it depends on where you stand. With this, I would conclude the session and hand over the responsibility of, finally wrapping it up to Tasneem. Thank you.
For that, can I tell something about the questions from Siddiqui?
We have this discussion
just 1 minute.
Over lunch, because still we need some time to conclude the session.
It is a privilege to be bringing a very successful conference to its conclusion, to be associated with the proceedings that have gone on for the last 2 days. We are now on the last session, which has been called the concluding session. Speakers in this session are Mr. Medic Resich, who will be giving us the concluding remarks, and the concluding speech by Professor Ubaid Siddiqui. I'll just give a brief introduction to Mr. Resich. He is currently the communication coordinator for the ICRC in India, Bhutan, and Maldives. He's from Geneva, where he studied international relations and specialized with an MA in war studies. Before joining the International Committee of the Red Cross, Marek worked for an NGO specialized in conflict resolution in South Caucasus. Within the ICRC, he has worked in Jammu and Kashmir and in Nepal, mainly doing detention visits, and then as a communication delegate in Peshawar and now in India. And may I request Mr. Merrick to kindly give us his concluding remarks, please.
Thank you very much. Well, what a feast of ideas, topics that were discussed in the past 2 days. It will be, I think, nearly impossible to summarize all of them. So what I'll do is I'll just take 4 angles that I hope will be relevant. The first one is issues that were debated by almost all the colleagues here in this room. The independence of media and the limits. What is the role of social media, the impartiality, the limits of impartiality, the role of governments, patriotism, reporting on humanitarian affairs, and the link it has to basically being politicized, the importance of source verification, and who has access to media, why and how. I mean, this is just to flag some of the important topics that a lot of speakers basically raised. We also had the second point. We also had some recommendations coming in this today's conference, and I think it's important to mention them. One was an idea yesterday that came about the events on the LOC, and the idea was to have more access and more responsible reporting, including on the humanitarian effects that are going on there now. So this was one idea, basically a recommendation. Let's see if it will be taken up. There was also one idea directed towards the ICRC, so I feel I should respond to this one. And the idea was, why not send or help journalists go to some of the conflict areas to be able to report. So just to answer on this one, yes, we do it. It has been done in the past in different contexts. Now, it is a very difficult thing to do in terms of logistics. So it's not something that we do every day and send people all around the world, but it is possible. So just to answer on this point. And maybe the third recommendation that I thought was also very interesting was the importance of research and to research enough the topic that people are reporting on in order to be able to make an informed argument. And this came out also in several of the speeches. Now, coming to my third point, I really appreciated the fact that all the speakers spoke about the topics that they were given. Some of them were a bit more tricky than the others. But also what was very interesting is that everyone brought his perspective from his own country, giving us information about the current challenges, what is going on in his or her country. And I think this was very interesting, very important, in order to share these experiences together. And another point was the safety of journalists. I think this also came out quite often in different speeches. My fourth point is I'd like to make a few quotes that I really liked. I hope you'll as well, as they were made by the distinguished editors in this room. One was, humility is important. It is important for us to be humble. So humility is important in face of our ignorance. That's the first quote. The second one, the best propaganda is truth, given by Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai yesterday. By Patricia this morning, we need to be more literate in peace reporting. I really like this one, as our conference is on conflict reporting, which is true, but I like this one on being more literate in peace reporting. And the fourth one, very important, by Mr. Kamal Siddiqui, safety is the most important thing for a journalist, so just to be on the safe side. A little word on the ICRC's, let's say, part in this conference, why we're very happy and interested to organize these kind of events together with Jamia Millia. Well, we work in the same places. And reporting on conflict has just been said here so many times, how complex it is. One of the complexities is also to understand sometimes some of the legal frameworks that can or should apply in different situations. Now, ICRC brings this expertise in the name of international humanitarian law or the law of armed conflict. One of the things that we encourage and we're happy to discuss, and also in our interaction with you, is that you know that when you go back to your countries, in many of them you have an ICRC office, is that you can contact us if you seek more clarity on this body of law. That is not easy, but it's also to make this link between you and us on this issue of international humanitarian law. And also the fact that we do it in our region here. This is something that we did in the past with the first conference 2006. It's been going on now for several years. We have this one now this year, and it's something that we want to continue to engage with you because we feel that there is an interest on the part of the different participants to bring these different issues together around one table in this region. My last point is about some of the, let's say, the way ahead, some of the follow-up. And if I can just request my colleagues to put the one slide, please. We have been putting some of the information on a Facebook page called Reporting on Violence and Emergencies. Now, we've put some of the content like pictures yesterday, and today we'll be doing that. We encourage all the editors to link to that page and to also continue the discussion. We'll be sending you, to all the editors, an email with the link to the Facebook page, a link also to a dedicated page on the internet, on the ICRC website, where we've put information. And for example, when we will be uploading pictures of the event, we'll also put the link there. So you'll be able to access all of that. So Facebook, the ICRC website. We created a hashtag also on Twitter for our conference. It's the one that is just here on the screen. We will be, you saw there are some cameras that were running here for the past 2 days. We'll be putting some, not, of course we cannot put everything, but some of the speeches or interventions, we'll put them on YouTube, but of course with your permission. So we'll come to you and request your permission to do that. And the speeches, as it has been the tradition, will be transcribed, so they are also available for also the students if they want to refer to that. And I think you saw that in your welcome packages. Is a good thing to be able to remember what was said and the different points raised. Last but not least, ICRC has, the Delhi office has a newsletter. The next one, obviously, what will be the main topic, the central topic of our newsletter, will be about this editors conference. We have also an e-version of our newsletter, so that we send by email. So we'll be also sharing it with you by email, dear editors, and to the students. If you've left your emails together with my colleagues, we can also send it to you. So with that, I'd like to say how important I think it is to stay in contact. There will be many more conferences like that, I hope. And thank you very much for these past 2 days. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Merrick. May I request Professor Ubaid Siddiqui for his remarks, please?
Well, I am just told that the lunch is ready to be served, so and we are getting late for that. So I will try to keep myself as brief as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have enough words to tell you how pleased I am with the outcome of these deliberations and discussions which we have had since yesterday. Kamal and Merrick both have made my task easy, because Kamal beautifully summed up almost all the important issues which we have debated and discussed in the past 2 days in his presentation, and similarly Merrick has also flagged some of the issues. I want to say two things. One is about social media, because we have talked a lot about social media today in particular. Well, social media has provided a platform to like-minded people to come together, and this is perhaps the main strength of social media. It brings like-minded people together, and it is again perhaps the main weakness of social media, because like-minded people may be good people, and they may be, for example, if marginalized communities and oppressed people, they come together and want to raise their voice through social media, it is a good thing. But at the same time, those who preach hatred, those who preach violence, those who are against humanity, they can also come together, and we see that they are together and they raise their voices. So this is the weakness of social media. The second question is that, of course, it provides a platform to people to unite, but can we use social media as a reliable source of news and information? This is the point, because those who come together, they actually have a perspective. He was talking about the perspective, so their perspectives are very well defined, and they are not neutral and objective in their approach, and that is why you see the one-sided thing. For example, if there are people who support BJP, they will definitely ignore all the weak or bad points about BJP, and similarly the Congress people will do the same. So this is again that is why I am so reluctant to accept social media as a source of reliable source of information and news. Second important point, which was raised yesterday by one of the students, why it is necessary for us to have journalism schools or media schools, why training is essential. And the answer is very Patricia, as Patricia said. Well, those days are gone. I remember the days when if you have good command over a language, particularly English language, if you can write good language, you could become a journalist. But the times have changed, and the reporting of events and the beats have changed, a lot. So that is why training and education are both absolutely essential. Unfortunately, the media organizations do not pay much attention towards the training of their journalists. Even if they have studied in a media school, they need some sort of training afterwards, because if you have a particular house style, for example, I have worked in BBC for a long time, and BBC has its own house style. So in order to imbibe that house style in BBC, reporters, correspondents or producers, etc., they organize training sessions, they organize and as a matter of fact, they spend quite a lot of money on that. And it really pays, because if you are very well trained, for example, there is a course about and those who go in conflict zones, they have to attend a course. It is compulsory for them to attend a course before going to a conflict zone, in which the journalists are told how to behave, what kind of dress you have to use there, how you have to move, and so on and so forth. So that is why it is necessary. But the unfortunate thing is, this I am telling you as a media educator now, because when I look at the syllabus of various courses, they are completely, utterly outdated, because in the past 20 years or so, the media has changed completely, and with the advent of 24/7 television news, and with the proliferation of social media, etc., the situation has completely changed. And I was thinking only yesterday that now we have to include social media as a subject in our curriculum. It is important for us to tell, because as I said, that sometimes it can be very useful. For example, take Twitter. So if Shashi Tharoor tweets and writes something, it becomes news. And there are politicians and celebrities who are using social media to give their opinion on various issues, and then it becomes a very good source of information, and you can follow up that story, or you can follow up that statement and develop it into a story. Last thing which I want to say, because when I moved from radio to television, and I was working in a leading media organization in this country as a news editor. If you go to any newsroom, print newsroom or newspaper newsroom, you will find a number of television sets, screens there, and they follow these channels, so which break news. So the breaking news is followed by them, and they pick up stories from there. And similarly, if you go to a television newsroom, so in the morning meetings, you will see that there will be a huge bundle of newspapers on the desk of the editor, and he picks up stories from there. So I am very concerned about this monotony, because they are following each other, and that is why you find the similar lines, you find the similar angles, same bites, and same sort of conclusions. So these are some of the issues which we should discuss and debate, and try to find some solutions to them. We have a very good project in the pipeline, and I hope that we will be able to do it. We are planning to publish a handbook for the journalists on violence and conflict reporting. We may be able to do it in the next 1 year, and I think that it will serve the purpose for which we have organized this conference. My colleague Tasneem Meenai will formally say thank you to all of you, but I also want to say thank you to all the delegates that you have accepted our invitation, and you came here and participated in this organization, in this conference. I am also impressed by the students who took a great interest in this conference, and who very patiently spend time in this room. I hope that they have benefited from these deliberations and these discussions. Thank you very much.
One of my last announcements now. It is my most pleasurable duty to be able to acknowledge the contribution of all people that made this conference successful. I will be echoing what Mr. Merrick Resich and Professor Ubaid Siddiqui have said with respect to we all being highly satisfied from the outcome of this conference, its proceedings, and its enthusiastic participation that came through in the last 2 days. ICRC, no doubt, has been the lead organization in bringing the idea to us in Jamia, and Professor Ubaid Siddiqui very ably led us from the front in taking all the responsibilities with respect to organizing this conference. So I wish to place on record the tremendous gratitude we have towards the ICRC for placing immense trust on Jamia to host this particular conference and bring all of us here together. Otherwise, I think this synergy that has come about may not have been possible. All three organizations, as I mentioned in the inaugural session, have a stake in what was being discussed. Just like Professor Ubaid Siddiqui mentioned, that students have gained a lot. In our center, where we talk about conflict and peace, the MA students especially who are doing an MA course on conflict analysis and peace building have really gained immensely from the proceedings here. They also have a course on media and conflict in one of the semesters. So there is a logic to all of us coming together here, and I think I just needed to reiterate that. However, all these people coming together, etc., needs to be, placed on record that who contributed what, because each of us have really worked towards making these 2 days possible. The head of the delegation of the ICRC, Mary Burns, was very, very, all the time showing her concern over how this would be possible. I must share this with the participants that your visas were a major issue. We've been saying it, but we lived it. Until they came, we were not sure that the conference would happen. So to that extent, all the officials from the ICRC, Mary, Merrick, Surinder, Ashish, and others, Snehdeep, and everybody who came on a daily basis, we were discussing the progress. Professor Ubaid Siddiqui's office, his assistant registrar, his teaching faculty, his members of the technical staff who have worked tirelessly covering the entire proceedings for the last 2 days. I wish to thank all of them because they have been a tremendous support recording all the proceedings for us. From my own center, my colleague, Dr. Kaushiki, my members of the staff, Zishan Anwar and Urmila Israr, 2 of my PhD students who have been meticulously taking down notes for the rapporteuring, that is Syed Jalil and Mir Nazir, sitting at the back. 4 of my volunteers who were here, that is Logna, Surya, Sagnik, and Zaki. I just make a special mention of them because they did do a task in a crowded room trying to seat everybody, and the overwhelming response we got yesterday, I'm sure it was evident to everybody that somebody got to sit and others got to sit as well, but on the ground, on the floor, and many others were seated outside on the staircase. So my apologies to them because we could not accommodate everyone here. Students of the Mass Communication Research Center, students of Nelson Mandela, for your enthusiastic response and your continued and sustained interest in the proceedings, because the house is still full here. Members of the staff who work for these conference halls, Mr. Akram and his team at the Edward Said Hall and at Mir Anis Hall, for giving us all the facilities and being there available for all help that we required. I must thank, I'm sorry, I overlooked the fact that I was supposed to thank my chairs, Pamela Philippos, Mr. Bharat Bhushan, and Mr. Madhukar Upadhyay, and all the speakers here, because it is because of you that there was substance, a lot of substance in this seminar. Thank you very much.
On behalf of all of you, I want to say thank you to Tasneem Minai because you also took great responsibility on your shoulders, and without your cooperation and work, it was not possible. Thank you.